Hi, I'm Rachel from the Academic Skills Centre, and today we're going to be talking about using feedback. We often think about feedback as a negative thing, like it's just a list of stuff we've done wrong. Really, though, feedback is so much more than that. Just like a football player listens to their coach and a musician learns from their teacher, receiving feedback and putting it into practice is an essential part of learning at university. In this video, we'll talk about how to take full advantage of all the feedback you get at university. So first off, it's worth asking, what is feedback? When we think about feedback at university, we tend to think about formal feedback, such as the marker's comments on a piece of assessed coursework. Formal feedback is particularly useful because it's your marker's carefully considered comments on your work. Your markers often take hours poring over your work and writing helpful feedback. Formal feedback also tends to be moderated by other members of the teaching team, so it's more than just one person's opinion of your work. In addition to formal feedback, however, we also have informal feedback, like casual conversations or emails with your tutor. Informal feedback is particularly important in practical subjects, where your tutor or mentor will comment on your work on a regular basis. Even in a more traditional academic subject, though, you will still receive informal feedback on your ideas, perhaps during tutorial discussions or office hours. It's important to recognize these informal conversations as feedback and to act on what you've been told. Sometimes your feedback will be formative. This means that you submit a piece of work, receive feedback, and then use that feedback to improve before your final submission. More often, though, your feedback will be summative. This means that you get your feedback alongside a final grade, and there's no opportunity to redo the work. In this case, it's just as important to read the feedback carefully and to think about how you can use it on your next piece of coursework. Especially if you see the same sorts of comments coming up over and over, paying attention to your feedback will really help you improve. It's worth asking, though, if feedback is so essential, then why does it often feel so negative? If you're anything like me, receiving feedback doesn't feel like a fun experience. One reason is that feedback often feels personal. Especially when we put a lot of work into an essay, it can be really hard not to feel personally attacked by negative feedback. This is even more true if you're out on placement and someone gives you face-to-face feedback about something you need to improve. The second reason is that feedback can be confusing. Sometimes markers use terms that we don't understand. Back when I was a student, my tutor kept telling me that I had dangling modifiers. What in the world is that? In other cases, though, we might disagree with the feedback. Perhaps your tutor says that you didn't explain a concept in enough depth, but you wrote a whole paragraph about it. It's hard to handle feedback when we think it's wrong. So, if feedback can be so challenging to accept, what's the best way to see it not as a personal criticism, but as something to help us improve? The most important thing is to wait. It's natural to feel upset the first time you read your feedback. The best thing to do is to leave it for at least 24 hours, then go back with fresh eyes. Secondly, it's important to be objective. If you disagree with part of your feedback, do your best to see it from your tutor's point of view. If they've said something isn't clear, for example, then maybe it isn't as clear on the page as it is in your head. Thirdly, break your feedback down into chunks. We'll talk about this more in the rest of the video, but you should analyze your feedback closely and pick out the things you did well, along with things that need improvement. Make sure to pay attention to the positive comments. A large part of improving is knowing what you're doing well. Finally, get help if you need more support or clarification. Once you've thought carefully about your feedback, it's completely acceptable to email your tutor or go to your office hours. Most tutors will be thrilled to discuss ways you can improve. We also offer academic skills appointments where we can work with you to put your feedback into action. Now that we've talked a bit about how to receive feedback, it's time to think about how to use your feedback. If you've got feedback on a recent piece of coursework, or perhaps a final placement report, you should pull that out now so we can work on it together. If you've not got any university feedback yet, don't worry. I've included a feedback sample later in this video, so you can use that as an example. First, as I said earlier, it's good to break your feedback down and analyze it closely. Find a piece of coursework or a placement report and take a good look at all the feedback, both the comments on the assessment text and the final comments at the end. Spend some time looking for positive feedback. It's great to know what you're already doing well, so you can keep doing it. Then keep an eye out for comments about things that are getting there. What aspects of your work are all right, but still need some improvement? Finally, note down aspects that still need work. What are your weakest points? This area is especially important if the same comments keep coming up over and over. If you're new to university and you've not got any feedback yet, you can use this sample for the activities in the rest of this video. Pause the video and take a minute to read this sample feedback. So let's start by breaking down the feedback. If you've got your own feedback handy, pause this video and spend a minute noting down at least one or two things that fall into each category: good, getting there, and needs work. If you're using the sample in this video, head back to the previous screen. All right, you should now have a list of 3 to 6 pieces of feedback. Let's use our example to see what sort of things you might have written down. First, in our sample feedback, the student has obviously done really well at both structure and argument. There are other things you could have noticed, but the marker mentions the strong argument twice in their feedback, so it's obviously an important part. Then let's see what's getting there. In our example, the student has chosen some interesting examples, which is good, but the marker also notes that they need to use a few more examples. This is obviously an area where the student is doing some good work, but it could still be improved. Finally, let's look at what needs work. This is an area where we can often spend most time, but it's important not to put too many things into this category. Having too many things that need work is just overwhelming. Instead, try and note down the top 2 or 3 areas for improvement. In this case, the marker has particularly highlighted the student's poor punctuation and sentence structure. Once we've broken down the feedback, what do? It's good to know what we're doing well and what we could do better, but how do we actually improve? Well, once you've got your feedback written down in a way you understand, the best thing to do is to actually think backwards and to reflect on what you did to receive that feedback. If that sounds a bit confusing, let's look at 2 examples. For example, if you received the feedback, your sentence structure was clear, you should ask yourself, what did I do to write with such a clear structure? The answer to this question could be all sorts of things, but one possible answer is that you planned really well before you started writing. Let's look at another example. In our sample, the student received the feedback that their sentence structure was poor. They should then reflect on why this was the case. Perhaps they've never learned to write well and they could benefit from an appointment with an academic skills tutor. Or in this case, let's say the reason is because they didn't edit their essay very well. The most important part of this step is that you have to be honest with yourself. Being able to reflect back on your actions and critically assess your performance is a key university skill. So let's give it a go right now. Pull out your list of feedback and choose 1 or 2 elements to reflect back on. If you're using the feedback sample, try to come up with as many potential reasons why a student might have received that feedback. Pause this video for a minute and come back when you're done. All right, we've made some good progress. At this point, we should understand what feedback we've received and what we did to receive it. The final stage is to create a feedback action plan, a practical plan for how you're going to improve next time. Since you've already reflected on what you did to receive the feedback, it should be pretty easy to figure out how to improve. If you did something well, you should keep doing it. If you did something poorly, you should try a new strategy. Let's take a look at some examples to see how this might work. So, going back to our positive comment, your structure was clear. As we discussed, this could be because you planned really well before writing. In this case, then, part of your action plan for next time is to leave time for planning every time you write essays. What about our other example, where the student's sentence structure was poor? In this case, we decided it was because they didn't edit well. The solution then could be to try new editing techniques, perhaps reading their work aloud. If you do this to all the pieces of feedback you've identified earlier, you'll have a comprehensive list of practical things you can do next time. If going through this whole process every single bit of feedback sounds daunting, try just choosing the one comment in each category: good, getting there, and needs work. pause this video for a minute and give it a go. So here we are. You should now have a complete feedback action plan, a concrete plan for improvement. To quickly summarize everything, your process should include 3 questions: what, why, and how. First, you ask yourself, what feedback did I get? Then you reflect, why did I receive that feedback? And finally, you create a practical plan. How can I do better next time? I really hope this process has been helpful for you. If you've been watching this video as part of a class, you should complete the accompanying activity. If you have any questions, please email us at ask@dundee.ac.uk. We'd love to help. Thanks for watching. All the best and good luck.